Well, good morning, good day, good evening, good night to everybody, depending on where you're joining from around the world. It's pretty amazing to see some familiar names in those that have joined in the participants view, but also lots of folks that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before. So I'm so honored to be able to share this time with you today. I promise we'll do our very best to make it a very good use of your time. And as always the case, we hope that this session is engaging and that you have questions and comments or potentially concerns you want to raise during the course of the discussion. So feel free to put those in the chat at any point. And of course, feel free to raise your hand, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of the discussion as well. My name is Dan Lammot, and I'm here today with some special guests who will get a chance to introduce themselves in just a couple of moments to talk about growing with the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. I am representing the team at threshold.world, or the Thresholders as we call ourselves, and we're a proud partner of Microsoft Tech for Social Impact, and wake up every day feeling blessed to be able to leverage technology to help our partners and customers do even more good. In that context, I just want to say thank you to all of those of you on the call today that are representing nonprofits or social impact organizations around the world. We acknowledge the challenges that you face and the difficulty of the work that you do, and just want to express our gratitude for every second you spend trying to improve the state of this planet we call home, and or the lives and livelihoods of the species that are lucky enough to live on this place. So with that, I'd like to take a moment and talk just for a second about the agenda, and then introduce our first guest from Microsoft Tech for Social Impact. So plan for the run of show today is that you're just about done hearing from me, which is probably a good thing. If for any reason there's some kind of technology failure in the course of the discussion today, then Paul Gallagher from the threshold.world team will take over. So just in case you see a switch, that's what's happening. And we're going to first meet and hear from Alex, a senior product manager from Tech for Social Impact at Microsoft, who's going to talk to us about Microsoft Tech for Social Impact and the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. And then after Alex is finished with his remarks and his discussion, we're going to move over to some very close friends and people that we look up to and admire from the National Forest Foundation, notably Jess and Tori. So I really look forward to introducing Jess and Tori to you in a little while. After their discussions, we'll have an opportunity for some Q&A, and we'll stick around as long as people would like us to. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Alex and ask him to come on camera. And I'll bow out while he gets involved, and he'll tell you about himself and the work that he and the team at Microsoft Tech for Social Impact are doing, and about the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. So Alex, welcome. Good to see you, as always. Happy Thursday.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you very much. It's great to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to partner with you on this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a couple of slides while I introduce myself. So bear with me just a moment, and hopefully you'll all see them momentarily. So as Dan mentioned, my name is Alex Cassava, and I'm a senior product manager here on the Tech for Social Impact team at Microsoft, working on the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. My particular area of focus are the data capabilities within all of the different components of the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. And after these brief comments, I'll be hanging around to answer questions in the Q&A. I'm excited to hear from our partners at Threshold and the folks at the National Forest Foundation. And I just want to start by echoing Dan's words of thanks. So thank you first to all of you who are representing nonprofit organizations for the work that you do. Thank you for taking the time to learn about this platform, to chat with us for a bit. Thank you to Dan, to Paul, and the rest of the Thresholders for all the work that they do to support the nonprofit community. We at Microsoft rely on the partners who have been with us along this whole journey in order to bring the products into the world and bring the feedback back from you all to us as members of the product team. We wouldn't be able to build the products that we build without the input that you provide to us. So I also just want to take an opportunity to say, as you get a chance to interact with these products, with the MC Friend Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit portfolio, please, please, please come back to us and let us know what's working for you, what can be improved, and we will do our best efforts to get there. So I just want to start by situating us a bit in the journey that Microsoft has taken when it comes to the nonprofit community. The Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit is itself a relatively new entrant to the ecosystem. We went into general availability last November, but Microsoft's commitment to the sector, to nonprofits, and to their challenges is a much longer and enduring journey. It began with a data reference model called the NGO reference model back in the mid-2010s, which evolved into the nonprofit common data model, which remains the foundation of everything we build for Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. And it's really a community-guided and community-managed assets. So Dan and the team have been with us along the way, providing input, helping shape that model, and it now lives outside of Microsoft. We continue to be one of its consumers. We hope to be one of its best customers, but it's really a community asset that lets folks in the nonprofit ecosystem say, here's how we need data to be shared to look across the different things we do from the back office to the front office. And in order to bring life to that model and to provide ways of interacting with that data, Microsoft invested in these accelerators, which are available on our GitHub. I'll drop a link to that in a moment. And over time, we also started to build first-party products that began as the fundraising and engagement capability, evolved into volunteer management, and into program import reporting and some other capabilities as well. So I'll talk at the end about what's coming in the future, an event that we have in just a month or so, where we'll be discussing the upcoming capabilities. But I want to situate us a bit further in what we have now as far as the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit portfolio. So I'll start by saying that at Microsoft, security is at the heart of everything we do, right? There's a saying you may have heard that Microsoft runs on trust, and trust depends on us securing your data, making sure that nobody except you and anyone who you choose to share it with has access to it. And that's really the foundation, right? We want to secure your organizational program participant data. You may have heard that NGOs are among the highest targets for cybersecurity attacks, along with journalism, journalists and government organizations. So we take security very seriously. And in addition to the security foundation, we take very seriously the goals that nonprofit organizations have. Because for us, a nonprofit could be anything from a local food bank, an environmental organization, a cultural institution, to a multinational NGO. It's important for us to find use cases that cut across all of these organizations. And the ones that we landed on include understanding your donors and supporters. So knowing who in the community you are building relationships with, what they expect from you, what their interests are, in order to ensure financial sustainability, volunteer engagement, and so on and so forth. The ability to take data to deliver effective programming. So being able to understand the state of your programs today, where the opportunities for improvement are, where the big challenges are, and where the biggest sort of social return on your investment is through the various kinds of reporting and analytics we make available. And in turn, to accelerate the outcomes you want to see in the world, right? Getting from a particular time to insight to a much more rapid time to insight helps you accomplish the mission and see the outcome in the world that you want to see. As far as the application portfolio and the principles that support these scenarios, we believe in helping you unify your data. So making sure that you can bring data into fundraising and engagement from multiple sources to get that holistic picture of your donors and supporters. Making sure that you're able to conduct analytics on your constituents to understand their historical giving, if you're talking about donors, their potential for future giving, making sure that you understand their organizational relationships and ties to one another using connections to tools like LinkedIn. Ensuring that you can reach back out to them in a way that's personalized and connects to their interests and recognizes their history of engagement with your organization. You know, as I'm sure many of you are donors as well as professionals in the field, it's very nice to be recognized for your history with an organization. And increasingly, younger generations expect that level of personalization as well. Being able to manage and segment and understand your constituents, be they donors, volunteers, or program participants. Being able to understand the financial picture, both the donations that are coming in, the expected donations that you might have from recurring givers, how that money is being allocated to programs and how those awards are being managed, as well as the volunteer community, right? One of the biggest sources of, in some cases, untapped potential because there aren't really great processes yet in place for volunteer management is that community. There's evidence that Volunteers are among the most likely to become donors. Volunteers are the most vocal advocates for your organization. So being able to make sure that you have a handle on who is in that community, what their interests are, connecting them with the right engagements, and making sure that they're satisfied and content with the ways that they're able to support your mission. And finally, program delivery. So this remains an area for growth for us. So we're very keen to understand, well, when it comes to program delivery, what kind of analytics do you want to see? What other capabilities might you want to connect on both the data side and the management side when it comes to programs? And when we situate these capabilities inside of our longer term product vision, we're really working across three horizons. The horizon that I mentioned, the first horizon that include the common data model that I mentioned includes a lot of these analytical capabilities, really focuses on making sure that data is unified, that there's a foundation of trust around data, that organizations are able to take the so what and move into the now what and be able to take the next actionable step. And beyond that, the second horizon is making sure that all of the different organizational functions are similarly unified and integrated and holistically understood where appropriate, right? Where data needs to be shared, where information might move from one group within your organization to another, and sometimes outside in terms of being able to tell the story of your organization. And threshold.world has a great product in this area as well. Being able to tell the story of your organization is critically important because that's how you build those personal relationships and build the investment that stakeholders may have in your organization. And finally, as we think about collaboration across organizations, how do organizations share data? How do they measure their impact and work together? This is critical for scenarios where the needs of a particular program participant or somebody who's benefiting from your work may cut across your individual organization, right? Folks who may need support across various kinds of social services, people who might be re-entering from incarceration or the criminal justice system, they don't rely on one organization. Refugees are a topical example of this. They rely on a whole host of organizations, some of whom are private entities, NGOs, and in some cases, government organizations. So being able to bridge those and create a comprehensive experience that focuses on the challenges of the program participant rather than solely on the capabilities of the organization is the third horizon there. And finally, I just want to highlight the ways in which Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit began as a dynamic solution, Microsoft Dynamics, but it really cuts across all of the capabilities of the Microsoft platform. So we'll be talking about fundraising and engagement, but fundraising and engagement isn't the only entry point into Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit and doesn't need to be one of the ones that you necessarily take advantage of. It's really a cross-cloud suite that takes advantage of Microsoft Dynamics, Azure, and the modern work portfolio, including SharePoint, including Microsoft Teams, where increasingly we're seeing organizations do their work. We don't want to pull folks out of where they're communicating and collaborating. We want to bring the data and bring the capabilities to where they are. So as you get a chance to dig in and learn about the portfolio, think about where the gaps might be in terms of the capabilities you have and what might work for you. These are all highly interconnected. We're continuing to work on those connections, and it all rests on that foundation of the nonprofit common data model. So I mentioned that next month in May, we'll be hosting a webinar where you can hear about the ongoing investments that we're making, what's coming next in the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit portfolio. I don't want to preempt that, but I do hope you'll be able to join us there on May 17th. I'll drop a link to that in as well. And I'll hand it over to Dan and the team at NFF to tell us about their journey. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Alex. It's good to see some new vision content in the presentation. I'm really excited to see the webinar in May and hear more from you and your team about what the plans are. As close as we've been to collaborating with TSI and the partner ecosystem, there's always new and exciting things coming out. It's difficult to keep pace with it, which I'm sure many people on the call can imagine as well. So really appreciate it, Alex, and we'll be back with you shortly. So it's my distinct pleasure now to introduce two people that I would like to consider professional friends and people that I've come to admire over the course of the last year or so from the National Forest Foundation. They will tell you more about NFF, but I strongly encourage those of you who believe in protecting and stewarding the public lands in the United States to go check out National Forest Foundation and support them for the work that they and their partner ecosystem do around the world. Just to put things into context, and Jess and Tori, sorry if this is a surprise in the agenda, but I was trying to figure out how to put things in context for my own mind earlier. The National Forest Foundation is effectively the steward of 193 million acres of the national forest system. Put that into context, that would be the third largest country in Europe if you were to put that land together, and the second largest state in the United States, just slightly in front of Texas and behind Alaska. So it's a huge topography to be the steward of. And it's such a pleasure for us to have an opportunity to partner with you both at the National Forest Foundation and your colleagues. So in alphabetical order, maybe we'll go with Jess, and maybe you can introduce yourself first, and then Tori, and then I've got some questions for you.
Thanks, Dan. Hopefully, I tested out my microphone earlier, so I feel like I'm equipped for this.
Loud and clear.
All right. I am the Development Operations Senior Manager at the NFF, and essentially was tasked with bringing us into a contemporary ecosystem to manage our donors, which, as I'm sure Dan will lead us through questioning as that expands to grants management and our ERP solution. But I primarily live in the development realm, so fundraising and engagement is my day-to-day project at the NFF right now.
Humble as always, Jess. We'll get into it later. I'm not going to let you get away with that. How about you, Tori? I can't quite hear you yet, my friend.
Thank you.
Perfect.
So I'm Tori Burwell. I joined the National Forest Foundation in January of 2021. I'm an information systems analyst, and my role was created in part because of Jessica's work in this recognition that NFF needed to move into a more modern era with technology. And so my job is to kind of oversee both our information systems and also our information technology, and now to manage our 365 tenant and help organize all of these larger database upgrades. So fundraising and engagement as mentioned, and then our ERP, which we're going to use Business Central for, and our GMS system as well. So lots on the agenda to do, but very exciting times at the NFF. And we have similarly very positive feelings about Dan and his team at Threshold. We also consider you friend colleagues.
That means a lot, Tori. Thank you for saying that. The first question is maybe the biggest one, and we got to know each other in 2021, and at that time NFF was going through an evaluative process like most organizations do to contemplate what the options might be to help you along this journey of leveraging technology more effectively to be able to both accomplish more mission, but also ensure that every member of the team has what they need to do what they're so passionate about doing. So that was a thorough process. You had great partners from Build Consulting involved in that process as well. What was it, do you think, that when all was said and done and you had a chance to really look at the marketplace offerings, what was it that helped Microsoft come out ahead and helped you choose Microsoft in that process overall?
I could probably jump in here first, because I was part of that long evaluative process we went through. First we brought on a consultant to really evaluate what our needs were. We knew we needed a new CRM. And I think had we not done that evaluation, we might have just picked a off-the-shelf CRM that looked nice and then continued operating the way that we had always operated, where all of these separate technology ecosystems were separate. There's no end-to-end solution. Information becomes siloed or just kept in spreadsheets. And through that discovery process, we found that we really needed something, because the nature of our work, the interconnectedness of our programs, we needed a solution that provides visibility to work from fundraising to program delivery, and also an interface that people are at least somewhat familiar with. And that brought us to, when you get there, you kind of have two big solutions, and I won't say what the other one is, but I think most people know. But you get kind of two options where you build your own, and Microsoft seemed to be, with the common data model and the ability to build an end-to-end solution, really what would work best for the NFF.
Yeah, and I can just echo that too and say that once we got into looking at our ERP as well, it was just, from my standpoint as the one looking at all the technology systems and having, to manage them on the back end, I was just like, this is what our lowest cost solution is. And it's going to be much easier for us because we're a conservation nonprofit. We're not a technology firm. We don't want to have a big technology staff. And so having both your databases and your central user system be connected, and using the same system to manage all of them, having the same training and expertise, the same similar interface, it's a big lift from where we are now. And it's, our staff's processing a lot of change, but we're really excited about where we're going to, because I do think it's actually going to be a more cost-effective long-term solution as well, and will just help also both cost-effective in like our actual incoming invoices, but also cost-effective in that we don't require as much staff as we would if we have many different databases that are not connected in addition to a general IT system, right? And then how do you manage your servers? So it's to connect everything just really does streamline things for us so we can focus on the ground work.
You live in the program world, you live in a stewardship role of ecosystems. And so, in some sense, maybe it's a bit of a simple metaphor for a simple mind like mine, but you'd want your technology to be representative of the way nature works in that context too, and how different parties have an effect on it. But how has the parts that you have implemented in fundraising engagement been working in that new ecosystem, the connected ecosystem? And do you feel like from a staff perspective, since both of you are engaging with them, even in the remote world that we're operating in mostly still through the pandemic, has it been helpful in edging the platform forward and in supporting adoption?
Yeah, I'll talk about this one again. We have, and I think most organizations are similar. We have staff that are excited about new technology and change and are really ready to invest the time it takes to learn a new system. And then we, of course, have staff who are more hesitant, and it's taken them longer to get up to speed. But I think that's the case everywhere. So far, adoption has been good. And I think most people are starting to, certainly our fundraising staff, the people who are engaging with donors, are beginning to see the benefits of tracking opportunities. We weren't using a system where that pipeline management was being done in spreadsheets, so there was no dynamic or integrated way to track engagement and interaction with a particular fundraising opportunity. So fundraisers are starting to realize the utility of that, and that's helping with adoption. But to be honest, because of the way our staff is, we've had to take a very hands-on approach to training, and provide a lot of resources, like in-house developed resources that are customized to the way that we work, to bring along those folks who are less ready or just less comfortable with technology. And I think we could have prepared for that a little better, but we're doing an okay job getting people up to speed. But that's definitely an investment in time that organizations should take, I think, to make sure staff come up to speed.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'd say that the interface that I notice with the whole Microsoft system is that there's often many ways to get to the same endpoint. And as a technologist, like, I love that. That's great. To me, it's intuitive. I think that that can make it confusing for our staff because they are used to such a more like limited way of working that, I mean, this is why we had to change things, because there were so many trade-offs there and things that were not working about that system. But yeah, I think that can be overwhelming for the staff of like, there's 3 different points you could click to get to the same piece. And so how do you instruct them? And I think that the learning curve is just steep. But once you get to that point where you're comfortable, it's such a more powerful tool. In general, the whole 365 system is like this. And I'd say too, something that helped us, Jess has done a great job of doing those internal learning sessions for fundraising and engagement. I've done office hours for our general Office 365 because that upgrade for us had to happen before so that we could actually get like the Outlook integration and things like that for fundraising and engagement. And so it was a lot for our staff to take in. And so we've just had to really dedicate a lot of that training and support time. So I'd say that's one of the biggest challenges. As a technologist, I love it. I think it's great. I think things are intuitive, but getting the staff to be tech savvy is like a whole separate challenge, right?
Yeah, and getting them to be tech savvy without putting it in the context of tech savvy, right? And I think you both mentioned this, but I really want to highlight this as someone who our team was alongside you as this process was going on, but seeing you take the initiative and set up those training sessions, adapting training and content documentation to be specific to your workflow processes and the transition. Like, I can't tell you how much we as a team were celebrating that quietly on our side, because you don't always find in customers that there's champions like the both of you, especially, and many others within the team that are really saying, okay, we've gone live, we're taking ownership of this, right? This is our solution and we're going to own it going forward. And it's great to have you and the team there from a support perspective to solve problems that we don't know how to solve or do things that we don't know how to do. But it was really clear to us that you were going to own it from the outset. And I think that's made more difference than anything else in the project, is the sense of ownership and stewardship that you're applying to the platform itself. And so for anybody that's getting ready for that process, that might be on the line or thinking about, where they are on the journey, make sure you have a version of Jess or Tori in the business and in technology that are really going to take ownership for the solution going forward and ensure that adoption on the ground, because your partners can really only do so much on that effect. So my hat's off to both of you for stepping up and doing that. What do you think are, if you've gone from sort of pipeline management and spreadsheets and gift entry through a number of different, online and offline channels into your legacy CRM and fundraising system, kind of interaction management happening kind of organically with each person as they chose to see that, into this world now where you have the front office in Microsoft 365, including Teams. You have fundraising and engagement installed live in production as part of the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. You're working your way towards, an integrated ERP and Business Central. What if your team was here today, what would they say are those initial positives just a few months after go live?
I can say on the 365 and Teams, just for us, like the instant collaboration has been huge. I mean, we had a system before where you would get an error message that if someone has a file open, you can't edit it. And I know that there's even been some small things with fundraising and engagement where I think our old CRM, you couldn't have more than one tab open at a time. I know that sounds like such a simple thing, but just to be able to split screen your work, I think things like that have made our workflows easier. And I think too, the email integration has been huge, just that instant import. I think that's been the thing that for our staff on development, we had one or two that had like other desktop settings that were blocking it, and they were like, hey, I need this. Like, I need this app. This is everything. So I'd say those are three really positive things that the staff, I think, would say are wins for them.
And another like maybe even more simple win, there's document collaboration, but there's also we had some like unofficial Slack channels that some of the staff used to communicate with each other, but not everybody was on it. It wasn't organization sanctioned. We just kind of used it if you were a little more savvy or not. But actually using messaging through Teams, like we're a national organization anyway, so but we're even more dispersed now as most people are. We certainly have more increased connection than with each other as staff just by having a forum to chat that is like organization sanctioned place to message people. We have like a Teams chat now where we share hip new bands that we like. So like there's some ability to create community even though we can't be together, and that's helpful. I'm also we're starting to travel again more, so teaching our executives how to use the phone app for Dynamics. In fact, the Dynamic Sales app works really nicely with fundraising and engagement. It's pretty intuitive and easy to use. That'll save me a lot of phone calls from our president wondering about information about a particular donor or a fundraising opportunity, just kind of moving us into a new modern era of self-service. She can look now. She doesn't have to ask me.
Do you think is there different community or commentary or conversation around this kind of newfound data transparency specifically for Ray and the fundraising team, now that there is a consolidated pipeline that's visible to everybody? Everyone can see the gifts as they come in. There aren't restrictions on the number of records that you can put in the system, without significant headroom and so forth. Like how is that data transparency across the continuum of engagement and stewardship and fundraising itself changed the way the team works?
I think for many people, having a visible pipeline is a great improvement, but we're still working on building the muscles required to remember to look. That's the data is available. We're starting to build out new dashboards where we get consolidated looks at reports and views that people will most frequently access. But there is some degree of training people to remember to look. And we're kind of at that point there where some folks are there. They just are looking, and they'll be asking my team for help when they just don't quite know how. But there's still some folks that just don't quite, where are we at with this particular opportunity? And I go, well, here's the link, let me Google that for you sort of scenario. Sure. But I think that takes a while for people to remember that all of this information is available to them now, because it didn't used to be. You used to send me an email for this sort of information.
Yeah, the other thing I can say about NFF is that we're growing so fast. I think we have almost a dozen people joining in the next 4 weeks alone. We're supposed to double in size over a few years. And so part of why it's so hard for our staff right now is because they're really trying to keep a lot of plates spinning. And so I just to give some context to like why that's so hard, it's just our staff have a lot going on. But I'd say too, like thinking about even the ability to like populate that data, I'm thinking of the prospect manager field. So we have designated prospect managers who are our main points of contact for certain accounts, but sometimes that isn't known. And if you're on our field team and you have a fundraising opportunity and you don't realize we have someone on a development team who already has that relationship, yeah, there's still a human error piece of like, you have to go look it up. But at least now what from, our VP's perspective, we can control now is saying this is the person who owns this account relationship or owns this opportunity. And so it's there to at least kind of establish that. And over time, I think it will get easier for the staff to be in the habit of looking. But it's great because it's so much better than being in the standpoint where it's all through email and you can't be held responsible in any way, because how are you supposed to know someone else has another email thread going? Now, at least by having it in a centralized system, over time, we can say, okay, this is really, it's your responsibility to go and look up this information and know how to access these things. So we're not at a point yet where we're like enforcing this harshly at all, but it helps to know that we're laying that foundation so that they're, as an organization, we're taking care of our side of that responsibility and saying, here is the designated owner for this opportunity or owner for this contact.
It's such a simple feature, right? And for the technologists on the phone, it's a look up to the user table. And yet there's so much business process. And I remember being in discovery with you and the team really, they wanted clarity and transparency around that, but they also wanted a managerial or leadership level decision-making process that would help facilitate that and ensure fairness, across management of relationships. And most importantly, to make sure that the people or institutions that you're engaging knew how to engage NFF. So it's like there's tons of process and discussion wrapped around that one little lookup field on each of the constituent records, and it's cool, really cool to hear about. So last question before we invite Alex back in is, you've got the front office well in place, but obviously lots more to do. You've got your first phase of CRM and fundraising and engagement live and evolving. You're now, headlong in an integrated, ERP system. What's going to happen after that? Where do you go from there? And given the growth pace of NFF, how do you think you're going to be able to juggle all of that?
Well, so ERP is on the agenda and we have grants management. I think, as we've talked about, grants management is going to be one of our more complex solutions because our needs are so unique. But I think hopefully after that, we are really just getting this, we're getting the staff comfortable with all the new systems, and hopefully there is not an accelerated massive change, and it's more about small adaptations, small third-party apps. I'm thinking about things like our ArcGIS or Avenza Maps, things that I don't know yet how those could integrate into our current system, but I know that there's a value add there. I know, Dan, we've talked about some of that with your team too. So I think we want to sort of lay these bigger blocks, get the staff comfortable, and then really say, okay, what's left? What's the icing on the cake that we can do after this that really makes us a great experience? And I think too, not to underestimate the amount of effort it takes just to manage these systems and keep them going. That's a huge piece too. And I just want to call that out as like, we're going to keep it going. So Jess, do you have any thoughts on that?
Only maybe technical specifics for our next phase of fundraising and engagement. We'll be adding volunteer management events and marketing. Marketing being, kind of wrapping up our efforts to really streamline our management of constituents. We also have a big non-donor constituencies that we service, from grantees to a kind of collaborative group memberships. So being able to manage those constituencies all in one platform. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to in phase 2 of the constituent management in particular.
Yeah. I have a lot to say about that, but I'll save it for our closure. And Alex, I'd like to invite you to jump back in if you're still with us. I think there was maybe one thing you wanted to ask Jess and Tori here today as well, if I'm not mistaken. And I see Alex's logo. There he is.
Hi, it just took me a second to come back. Yeah, I mean, I think my question is sort of along the lines of what Dan asked as well. I mean, how would you like to see the Microsoft platform evolve to meet your needs as they evolve?
I think an immediate suggestion, is there's good dynamics literature and instructions for using dynamics, but fundraising and engagement specific user guides seem a little light. I mean, it'll be great to see that documentation grow. I've already noticed some things being modified and updated since we started this process, but it is sometimes confusing for when the sales language crosses into nonprofit language, because even though we might be saying the same things, we're using different words, and it can be a barrier, I think, sometimes to staff trying to come up to speed using those resources.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Tori, anything you want to add for Alex while we've got him here?
I would just say there's just a few things with the back end management in Azure where we had some confusion around, like, because we got these nonprofit credits, but they were only tied to one very specific admin account. And I think more clarification around, we also looked up, can we make someone an admin, not a global 365 admin, but just an admin for Dynamics. And I couldn't find clear role assignments for that. Obviously there's so much information out there for 365 at this point. And so I think, weighing that and saying, do we have that ability? And then also when we went through setting up things in Azure, it was really important to set things up with the right account. And because we have like a partner IT service and it was under their accounts, even though I had admin rights, I couldn't actually see a lot of our resources. And at one point, we had like 5 outstanding invoices. We didn't know who they were getting emailed to. And we actually had our service shut down for a few days during development. So that was, I mean, obviously, like there's a responsibility on our end to understand how we're going through that setup too. But I think that even once we got things into the right point with the right emails associated, there was a disconnect, especially with the nonprofit credits. That was one thing that they wouldn't show up in our tenant. And so that was just, it's a very small and particular thing, but to me it was very important because I'm like, I want to use these credits. I want to make sure that we're a nonprofit. We do need to think about cost efficiency. So you could file a bug for that. I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, go on. I'll follow you.
I was going to say that's really helpful as well. I think on the broader Azure side, I'll make a note of that. At least when it comes to Azure and the MC Friend portfolio, I'll just say stay tuned for May.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to say I'm hoping that there's some updates in May. So thanks, Alex, for foreshadowing. Safe harbor. We as partners have seen a huge amount of progression and investment in Microsoft and making this clear, even over the short number of releases since these products have been GA and then wrapped into the proper industry cloud at Microsoft. And I'm excited to see how quickly each release is going to move us forward. And Tori and Jess, as but maybe not everybody knows on the line today, NFF was one of the earliest organizations to make the decision to adopt, and that took some courage, and there's been a lot of lessons learned for us as your partners in that process. So I want to thank you both for that in the context of it. we'll have a couple of quick remarks at the end, but I wanted to open it up and see if there are questions or comments from the crew that's been here with us for the last 48 minutes or so, and open